5 brutal facts about the legendary pirate Blackbeard. 1. He shot members of his crew to remind them that he was in charge. Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was huge. It had a crew of 300 men, all of them drunken pirates, ready to lose their minds at the slightest provocation. It was not easy to keep them in line, probably why Blackbeard made a habit of getting drunk and shooting at them. At first, Blackbeard was thought to have had a hard time getting his crew to obey him. After raiding the ships, they would get drunk on stolen wine and start bullying, and at first Blackbeard struggled to get the men to listen to him. However, that all changed when he started acting even crazier than they ever could. According to an old legend, Blackbeard was once drinking with his first mate, Israel Hands, when suddenly Blackbeard blew out a candle, pulled out a gun, and shot his first mate in the knee. Israel Hands did nothing to provoke Blackbeard. When Hands asked Blackbeard why, he simply lit the candle again and said, "If I don't shoot 1 or 2 crew members now and then, they'll forget who I am." 2. He burned the toxic chemicals to see who could survive the longest. Blackbeard had some pretty strange ideas about how to pass the time. According to another story that circulated from his crew, a pirate once got drunk and challenged his men to see who was the toughest man on the ship in the craziest way possible. He led his men, who seized the challenge, into the hold of the ship and closed all the hatches. Then, when he was sure that all avenues of escape were sealed, he set fire to a pot of sulfur. Burning sulfur filled the air, suffocating the men. Desperate for their lives, they began banging on the locked doors, begging to be let out. The other sailors broke down the doors and let them go, but Blackbeard would not leave. He waited until he was sure he was the only person breathing acid in the air. Then he stepped out through the pale yellow mist and shouted, "God damn it, you yellow-bellied peregrines. I'm better than all you milkmen put together." Then he said to his men, "Next time we'll play on the gallows and see who can swing the longest on the rope without being strangled." This time, however, his men knew better. There were no volunteers. 3. He raided the ships in search of a cure for syphilis. Archaeologists digging through the sunken remains of his ship stumbled upon something they never expected to find: Blackbeard's personal syphilis syringe. The legendary pirate seemed to have kept a syringe filled with mercury near him at all times to treat the raging syphilis that haunted him after years of chasing his prey. It was a strange find, but it did explain a lot of his actions. Blackbeard made healthcare an important part of his plans. When he raided ships, he captured surgeons and forced them to stay with him. On one occasion he raided the South Carolina, seized a ship and threatened to kill everyone on board. Then he demanded only a chest full of medicine. At first, historians speculated that he simply needed a good supply of medicine to treat his men. Now, however, it is possible that he had a more urgent need for all that mercury. 4. He fired bags of glass, nails, and lead at enemy ships. Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was equipped with 31 cannons, but they were not always filled with cannonballs. When he attacked the ship, his goal was not to sink it. He wanted to keep the ship intact so he could steal it. So he used something even more violent. Blackbeard kept canvas bags of glass, nails, and lead on his ships, which he inserted into his cannons instead. When he fired them, the shrapnel spread throughout the target ship, cutting up the men and wreaking havoc before he and his men even boarded. That doesn't mean, however, that he never shot to drown. When he was crazy enough to use cannonballs, Blackbeard would tie 2 together with metal bolts. They would spin as they fired, punching through the walls of the ship with extra force and completely destroying any vessel that came in his path. 5. He still got a full royal pardon from the British. After all the terrible things Blackbeard did, it's hard to believe that the British Navy was willing to rest without putting him on trial. But at the height of the golden age of piracy, raiders like Blackbeard became such a big problem that the military simply refused to arrest them. Anyone who promised to stop being a pirate, the authorities announced, would get a full government pardon as long as they promised never to do it again. Blackbeard agreed to the deal, but not before experiencing every horrible thing he could for the last time. First, he convinced his friend Stede Bonnet to get a pardon himself. Then, while Bonnet was distracted, Blackbeard robbed his best friend and his men blind and landed his crew. Blackbeard then got his pardon before Bonnet could know what he had done. There was nothing Bonnet could do to get revenge without making himself a fugitive again, and so Blackbeard robbed him with impunity.